energy, so much going on, not only in the world, like here in the movement of Unblinded, with what's happening this weekend, with all the members in our elite program. It is truly magical. And as we step into gratitude, what are you thankful for? Let's step into the energy of gratitude wherever we are right now, whether we're taking a run, whether we're sitting at our desk, whether we're still trying to hit the snooze button and just listening to the huddle on the side, wherever we are, what are we grateful for? Let's drop it in the chat. There's so much to be grateful for. I'm grateful for book bags that they carry stuff. And when you go somewhere, you can bring the things you need. So I'm grateful for book bags. That's something that I'm grateful for. I've had one travel bag for 4 years, traveled the world with it, has stickers from all the countries I've been in. And it's a pretty awesome book bag. So that is something to be grateful for in the world of many things to be grateful for. Book pack, backpack. It's a great question. I think it's more of a backpack, Jay, but thank you for dropping that in. So for gratitude, for thankfulness, what are we thankful for? Are we thankful for the magic in our lives, the moments, the opportunities, the moments with our children, with our family members, with ourselves and our own thinking time? What are we thankful for on this Thankful Thursday with so many things that's happening, that's stepping into gratitude? And on that energy, let's step into the indispensable element. There's, 4 steps, 10 indispensable elements. One of them being love. And on Thankful Thursday, how does it feel? Think of the emotions of gratitude and love. How similar are they? I'm not saying they're the same. Definitely not. I'm saying how similar is it to step into them? Gratitude, for the devices we're using to get here. Gratitude for each other. Gratitude for the energy, the love that's present between us, the world, the people around us. How similar are those energies? And why is it such an important, indispensable element? Because love can also equal curiosity. When, dynamics arise, loving all people and standing, because sometimes we may not agree. Sometimes it might not be said the way we want to receive it, or many other dynamics. We always have the opportunity to choose. We always have the opportunity to choose to love everyone, to love all people, to be curious. And gratitude is a beautiful, step, door, hack, key, whatever trigger, whatever it is for you to step into that feeling. So in your conversations, as we, step into the formula, the 4 steps, we practice the 10 elements, which are omnipresent. The steps are 1, 2, 3, 4. The elements, there's no specific order. We have them in smaller QVC. It's a beautiful way to remember them as an acronym, but they're omnipresent, always there, always varied. And the rise of indispensable elements is critical. Love, emotional and energetic transference. Karen Dreyer did a beautiful display last week of emotional and energetic transference, truly stepping in, boom. It was I just remember, I felt like I was in a basketball game. I was boxing out. Her energy was just so potent. It was there. And these elements matter in the world of influence, in the world of communication, all that matters. So I'm going to step into the chat here and just read some of the things that we're grateful for to kind of carry our energy forward. Karen Kent, thankful for this awesome September weather and being on the huddle. Don Pett, super grateful to have you on the Real Raw. Love, your communication. I'm grateful to be free to enjoy my thoughts. Joe, it was a good call this morning. Thank you. Jay Levine, I'm thankful for the power of acknowledgement and validation. The illustrious Joe Hagan, going with this one. Ready? Joe the Rock Hagan. I was seeing him doing the eyebrow yesterday, so I'm dropping that in there for some fun energy. D Rush, grateful for the 3 Fs. Fernando, fall and fun. You're ridiculous. D Rush, you're funny. Mr. Orange, thankful for being part of this community. Thanks for everyone's gifts and an orange heart. I didn't even know they had orange heart emojis, but of course, Frank Clark, Mr. Orange with the orange heart. Ina, God's provisions, love that. Liba, when living in gratitude, we are filled with love. Michelle, thankful for all the opportunities that have been cleverly disguised as obstacles. Donna, I'm grateful for the pen, my voice, and the wealth of health. So there is much gratitude, many beautiful things happening, here on the huddle. So let's continue with our conversation as we were in through the indispensable elements. Teresa, thankful, just catch that last one. Thankful for rising and self-mastery. Yeah. You know, Teresa, you show up different. You've always been incredible. Let me start there. And like now you show up different. And I mean that lovingly, respectfully, like in fun. It's like you're different. You show up different. You are the same human, amazing soul, all those things. You show up different. The way you transfer, the way you move, your certainty, your Zeus, your goddess, you're aspirational, and you are definitely fun. Your energy variance is like boom, 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 boom. And that's a byproduct of self-mastery. That's a byproduct of self-mastery. Because remember, the 10, 12 elements of self-mastery, which, you know, there's many, and many fine folks on this call have studied from the best of them. And I hear a churner in the distance.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Happy Thankful Thursday. So yeah, like what's happening, what's present, immense amounts of gratitude. I just want to finalize a couple things. On tonight's mastery call, we're going to be talking about Jacqueline Franchetti is going to be coming on. Super appreciative. And we'll be chatting about a couple issues related to domestic violence, and some of those brought to my attention yesterday. Just want to clean up real quick. And everybody has their own perspectives on everything. And I guess one thing I want to put out there is, if there's anything that I said in addressing the issues of Erica's question, I guess from last week or earlier this week, anything about domestic violence that somehow you think was off-putting or insensitive or incomplete, I think one question was like, what tactics or other things would you recommend to, you know, support in a situation like that? And I guess just real quickly on that, we'll talk more about it tonight. My answer to that question will be, if there's something that somebody says that is you perceive to be objectively, societally offensive, or even situationally would be hurtful to your feelings, then I would pull the person aside. I think everybody can do whatever they want, right? But I pull the person aside and share with them heart to heart, you know, how that situation made you feel. And of course, if you're that, we'd always say direct confront. And if that person is not receptive, then I would take it up the ladder of authority, whatever that ladder of authority may be in the situation, you know, to whomever would be above that situation, right? But I, in my heart, I didn't get any feedback different from this, but it wasn't like, you know, exactly that it was on point. So if there's any way that you think I was insensitive in how I communicated about that situation, I'd like to know. I'm always looking to grow, but I was hyper intentional, hyper clear, I thought. But if there's even a sentence that was in there or structure of the dynamic, I'd be super curious and grateful. Number one. Or two. Number three, on the mastery morning calls, we have a complex dynamic. I mentioned it before, of there being resounding and overwhelming complaints about certain individuals taking up too much space. It's been going on for months. And we've even had to consider removing people from the group for months over those issues, which is I have fought against internally inside of Unblinded team, not wanting to remove anybody. And we've been addressing it. We've addressed it in certain situations directly. And so this is inside the 8 a.m. mastery call. And, you know, I was going to go through details of the situation I was involved in, but I will say this, that I've been in groups led by some of the most respected and appreciated people on the planet, where said leader has blown up people for not, and I'm not talking about this situation, I'm talking about overall, for not having their commentary being in service of forwarding the effort of the group, right? And what we're trying to do. And so, you know, just when we're commenting, two issues. One is when anybody, let's start with this, when anybody is commenting on anything that might be a particular area of sensitivity to them, right? Let's be empathetic, and like let's strive for empathy, love, for sure. And then we get to the complex question of boundaries. Like, what are the effective boundaries, and when and where should they be? And there is a differential. So that's number one. And two, not to be dismissive, insensitive, condescending, any of those things. Like that, we don't have space for that at all here, right? And third, and we'll get more to specific optics because on the master call on the 8 o'clock call tonight for mastery folks. But this touched the huddle, so I'm going to touch it in these general ways. But we'll get more specific on the mastery call for people in mastery. And then finally, in addition to all those, that there are people who are far more, who resonate more, right? Period. With groups. That's why Oprah's Oprah, and somebody who has a TV show who's a really nice person has a TV show for months, no longer has it. Yet there might be, 10% of people who can't stand Oprah, right? And there might be 10% of people or 5% of people that think said, talk show host that didn't get a job is better than Oprah. Like her family may think so, her friends may think so. Somebody may think that their brother is a better speaker than Tony Robbins or has better insights. And he may have a group of 4 people around him that are you're better than Tony, and they're chanting that all day long. Or, you're a better coach than, Herb Brooks in hockey, for the high school players that played for, St. John's Public High School in Idaho, right? And it doesn't make anything wrong, right? But there's, in group dynamics, there's group resonance, there's group perspective, and in it, right now, what I'm saying, every single person here is listening to what I'm saying, and you're applying it to something different and speculating on all the different things that I'm communicating about, and applying it to your own knowledge, speculation, how your neurons in your brain fire, making connections. And I guarantee you, not a single one of you is thinking about the exact same thing and things I am thinking about, right? But you're certain you are, just like I am at times. Like Michael Smikin would say, it's like Sean can read minds, like to advanced science. I definitely cannot read minds, right? But I definitely have a very unique ability at a higher level than we'll go 99.999% of people to discern what individual people are thinking when I'm communicating with them. And that's why I've been so effective at exposing Ponzi schemes, fraudsters, and other things, right? And that's why I evoke very strong emotions from people, because people can understand that I could read into situations in them, and it can create very high expectations of me from people, which I appreciate. And I want and appreciate your high expectations. Just asking, not asking for anything, actually, just offering a perspective that when it comes to group dynamics, there are very strong opinions about like structure and how something complex should be positioned and discussed. There's folks that on every single issue that have been affected by trauma, the traumas of blindness, the traumas of sex trafficking. People with those who've been affected by those things are on these calls consistently. There's people here that have been, lots of people who've been involved in situations of domestic violence. There's some people who perpetrated domestic violence on this call, I am sure. I don't know that for a fact, but I've been in Date with Destiny in Tony Robbins' room, and when the entire room writes the thing that they're most embarrassed about in the world, it is unbelievable to hear the things that come out from that room, like from any room. I've been in there and somebody said, yeah, I've murdered somebody, that these are things in the basket that go up and they pull out all the things people have done. So I am sure there's perpetrators of domestic violence in this line, probably that didn't have the penalties they should have. There's people in this line that have many that have been victimized by domestic violence. And my heart aches and breaks for that. And I'm one of them. I experienced domestic violence as a child. I was not beaten. I was hit, not often, to be really clear. And I saw alcoholism, domestic violence occur in my household, and not at an extreme level, but at a meaningful physical level. And when I was 11 years old, it was the most frightening thing I ever encountered in my life. And it impacted my decision-making and my avoidance of conflict probably to this very day. despite all the work that I've done in certain situations, right? Which is a longer, more complex discussion. I have worked with and in my own home and family through marriage, and I was married twice, have dealt directly with people that were sexually abused and worked hard and spent an incredible amount of time, money, and energy in the broken system of supporting people who've been sexually abused by family members, by strangers, people, rampant domestic violence dynamics that I have dealt with directly, including in my own home, not with me ever accused, ever, not once, and not me involved as victim on either side of that, but with other people in my household. And I've had the police in my house numerous times dealing with other folks in the household, you know, at a certain point in my life, not my biological children and not their mom, right? That unbelievably painful, hyper complex, and things that I spent unbelievable amounts of time, money, and energy to deal with. So I can emphatically state this, you know, if I felt like I didn't give enough space to a topic, I'm always open to feedback. But if anybody is confused about my understanding of the dynamics of domestic violence as somebody who's been on the receiving end directly and indirectly, and who's spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on therapists and programs for people who've been victimized by it directly, who's flown on airplanes 10 different times to try to find the best experts in the country to deal with the issue. Like, there's no defensiveness. This is emphasis. Because sometimes we can be ignorant and make up our own stories and hear 3 sentences of something and decide what somebody thinks about something. And that would be being blind as well. I will emphatically state that. And if anybody ever wants to have a discussion about it openly here, great. And you have a voice and a platform to talk about any topic within reason, because most people are here for business purposes. And we are here to touch emotional issues that affect business purposes. But at some point, it does go outside the scope of what we're here for. And even this is like, for some, would be very frustrated with me right now, because this will be the 3rd time I'm talking about it. For some, it's like, no, we need to talk about it more. So we're servicing a diverse group of people, but the outcome of Unblinded is more money, less time, more magic. And when somebody's been traumatized or affected through a disability, through a horrific trauma that has been perpetrated upon them, right? Through their innocence and their childhood and their adulthood or anywhere in between. And I'm not saying that's this situation, I'm making a global statement, right? Which I'd be happy if you put out on the internet over and over and over again. But I would always ask that you put out on the internet my complete comments and never just one sentence, right? Which is what the media does to contort and distort everything continuously, right? Which is why we have 90% of the dissonance that exists in our country is rooted on distortion and blame and judgment attack. And it has been since the inception of humanity, not since the inception of the United States, not since social media. It's only been galvanizers, but since the inception of humanity, distortion, dilution, and deletion has caused pain and human communication and emotions, right? Since the inception of humanity. And we haven't solved those problems yet, but we're getting there. And so if there's, at a certain point, things get to a place that they can't take up the space and time of people are like, I'm here to build business. Like, this is a business platform, right? Yeah. And the magic part is what we all want through our business. We do get to a point where it's like, hey, you know, with complete and total empathy, we need to move a discussion off platform and into something that Unblinded is not built to handle, right? Where people are going to get the help that they need, the counseling, the therapy that they need. And by the way, I'm also not stating that all problems equal. Okay, go to a counselor. I think much of counseling, this is my general statement, is substantially, if not wildly, ineffective. And that is not pop culture. And I'm not Tom Cruise on, whatever show was on when he said he doesn't ever think somebody should take any mental health medication. But I will never fail to take a position. I think we take way too much pain medication in America. We take way too much mental health medication in America. And in certain situations, those are definitely called for. And I don't know what those situations are, precisely where that line is. I think that there is, just like in coaching, in high school football coaching, in business coaching, in lawyering and doctoring, in accounting, that the vast majority of performers in those industries are at best okay. And there's a micro percentage of people that get real results for people in complex situations. And that includes counseling, right? That includes counseling in my book. And I think there's many, many things. And, I think the head, forgive me if I get this wrong, but it's something like this. I think it was the head of Bellevue Mental Hospital wrote in the foreword to Awaken the Giant Within. This is I believe he's a psychiatrist. He may have been a psychologist, but I believe he's a psychiatrist. MD, I believe, and certainly at least a doctor of psychology, wrote that if the people executed the self-mastery, I'm putting the word self-mastery, he said techniques in this book referring to Awaken the Giant Within, then there'd be far fewer people in Bellevue Hospital. So I do know this, that by employing more masterful techniques in our influence, in our process, and our self-mastery, we get very different results. And we go into the basket of self-mastery, we get very different results by working through those dynamics of physiology, the rule structures we have, how we condition in beliefs, all of those things. We can get to a very, very different place of having self-sustainable, emotional and mental, excellence, well-being, happiness, joy, passion. I do not know where the line is when it becomes the need for other professional dynamics. So we will always endeavor to do our best collectively on that, with love, with empathy. And yes, there's a reason in the United States that we have rules, the way this government was structured when it was built, this country, which it didn't always do effectively, clearly, okay, because there's slavery. But the dynamic was, and that was an economic and human moral quandary of insanity. Footnote, right? Slavery is something that's been around since the inception of humankind in every culture and every dynamic horrifically, and is on the verge of eradication off the planet Earth, thank God, but still not, because people are sexually enslaved as we speak today, and enslaved in other ways as well. And I am not confused, right? And so the dynamic, though, of the majority does not overcome the rights of the minority. So the protection of minority rights, and minority is not skin color, it's the lesser group. If the majority controls and just like does whatever it wants, then that's how we get like Nazi Germany, right? So there is the protection of the rights of those that have less votes, the minority meaning less votes in something. But other than protecting a base level of rights, which whatever those are, the majority does make the decisions and set the policy, other than protecting the rights of the minority. And I believe in that system very well, because if everything was protecting, every right of everybody, saying everything I want to do is this. So like, hey, I want, my decisions, I want the microphone 7 days a week on every scenario. Well, that can't happen, because then we don't have an organized structure to do anything. If people are going to build a house, it's going to be a certain way. If people are going to fight for the rights of people inside of domestic violence, there's still leadership. Like, there's not every idea doesn't get airtime. There's a hierarchy for every organization, whether it be, fighting for the rights of the disabled, fighting, for the rights of religious freedoms, fighting for the rights of anything. There's still a hierarchical dynamic of decision making, with some people not happy with what the leadership decides to do with airtime, approach, vision, etc. That's why people move in and out of groups. So that is and like, we will send you back to this huddle, right, in the future to listen to. If people hear something like, well, how does this, and the people not care? Like, And I get it, like if you haven't been here all the time, but we will create a section on the website, and that will be drawn to say, like, what does Unblinded think about how humans in group dynamics should function when sensitive topics come up, when disagreements come up between, majority groups and minority groups. And again, I don't mean minority the way that we frequently use it in the media. I mean by people with less votes. So it could be like the minority group could be, hey, should we have cheesesteaks or should we have like quinoa? Like the less votes group, right? And so what do we do about it? We're going to take all these huddles and potentially what we talked about in the mastery call and put it there. And so whatever anybody has a question, they can listen to all of it in their entirety, and we will come up with a written structure around how we treat one another with empathy and love, that we reserve the right to remove people who are not serving the group with their communications and comments, as well as not serving the group with a lack of empathy and how they communicate if somebody is violating a principle, what the chain of command should be. And these are all things that would be important, to bring up. So for now, right, if something comes up and there's a challenge or a dynamic involved, I'm going to say communicate that to Teresa. And I'm also going to say Teresa's not going to address the challenge. She's going to collect the challenge, right? She's going to collect the challenge. And Nicole, copy Teresa and Nicole on it, and we'll put that communication information appropriately in the chat, and then we will address it in time. And it may not be public, it may be private. So forgive me for anybody who's like, enough. This has been done to serve the interests of those that don't have the vote, the minority, as well as to make sure we're correcting behaviors. Because if people are speaking inappropriately anywhere here and are functioning dismissively, that's not the preference. But what is dismissive to one is not dismissive to another. I'm not speaking about anything specific. It gets complicated. And if we've ever watched, really intelligent movie making, one of the most effective things a brilliant book or movie does is it helps you wrestle with the complexity of perspective. It helps you wrestle with the complexity of perspective. And we lose mastery and strength when we forget the complexity of perspective. And that means, like, how could somebody think it's good to ever raise your voice, right? Might be a complexity of perspective. I'm not talking in a domestic situation. I'm talking about, like, let's say on a huddle for me, or from a stage, or from my high school coaches. Well, I happen to think that the raising of your voice is an effective tool to create opening of listening. And I believe that. Somebody may think that's horrible. And there's people who are proponents of nonviolent communication, NVC, who would say it's never okay to raise your voice in any situation that's suboptimal. I disagree, right? And I honor their work and their perspective, but I do disagree. Because I know this, if voices weren't raised to me in my life, I wouldn't be sitting here. I'm 100% sure of that. So I'm using that as an example that we could have differing perspectives, but where it becomes wrong is when we begin to vilify others, unless it is clearly objectively problematic. Like if somebody were to say, hey, I don't think pedophiles, there's a real problem with that. Like that would not be a First Amendment protected issue that I would be saying is okay to say. Some would argue differently. Libertarians that think people should be able to say that. I don't, right? But as long as they're not a pedophile, I'm not vilifying for them, but they wouldn't be allowed around here, right? So the issue is like boundaries where somebody belongs, but it's a different question than when we vilify people, right? And when they belong and don't belong is complicated. And this comes from 27 years ago, me entering law school with brilliant people and being taught the complexity of perspective. And call it that, but I've done that for an incredibly long time. Factually, legally, emotionally, there is massive complexity in perspective. So enough said. Thank you. Chapter close of the mastery call tonight on this. That will be up on the Huddle. And that's it. And I also want to work really hard going forward to not be justifying who we are, what we believe, because I have spent about 3 hours now addressing all of this, and I didn't have 3 hours to drive up uninterrupted with my daughter to college. And I spent 3 hours in this issue because I care so much and I love my daughter a lot. And I rode in a separate car so I could do Real Raws to serve this community. And I've invested a ton. And if you think I haven't invested a ton enough, then you build your community and you lead it your way. And I hope and wish you all the best and love you with all my heart. So that's where we are. As we continue, Fernando, it is a week of fear of rejection and agreement formation that is fully present. And we're not going to pick up with where we left off yesterday. We'll pick up where we left off yesterday with Adam Gugino's fears on Friday. And again, altering to hold space for the needs of some who we love and care about much, and the needs of the collective that we need and care about much. So we'll pick up there tomorrow. I will say this, that the Wednesday calls for Real Raw Partnership are accelerating. We covered, if you weren't on it, I would watch it, the critical need for emotional energetic transference and the power of acknowledgement. And I would challenge everyone to begin to confront your fear of rejection, the topic theme for this week, with acknowledgement. And so when somebody's coming like, what are you selling? Wow, your level 5 listening tells you like something's at stake, Johnny. Like, cool. Like, what gives you the idea I'm selling something? Like, lean into it. Or like, yeah, I'm absolutely looking to go from hello to yes. Depends on what you mean by selling. If I'm hearing selling to mean manipulation, the taking, giving you something you don't want, pushing something on you not good for you, absolutely not. That's not selling. If selling is like hello to yes influence about a something, I'm absolutely selling. Like scotoma creation, acknowledge, and I appreciate your energy, like in your reaction and the strength of your boundaries, Johnny. Thanks. Like leaning in with acknowledgement creates scotoma. Okay, leaning in with acknowledgement creates scotoma, and it also transfers energy. Like that's Zeus energy.
John,
sure, yeah, please.
It's Adam. I had that yesterday after a 20-minute introduction call. What are you selling? And wow, okay, well, what do you? I asked, what do you think I'm selling? And they went on for about 10 minutes describing all the things they thought about coaching, training, sales. And of course, by the end of that, I was able to really address all of those different or nuances and distinctions of what we do as opposed to, what they perceived in what I was selling. So it was incredible.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's what it is. Because everybody has preconceived notions of everything. I say lawyer, you say what? Collectively, something. I say accountant, you say what? I say man, you say what? I say woman, you say what? I say human being, you say what? I say money, you say what? I say market, you say what? I say cold call, you say what? I say Irish, you say what? I say Italian, you say what? I say white, you say what? Right? Like I say Christian, you say what? I say Jewish, you say what? I say Muslim, you say what? Right? In each of these situations, I say agnostic, you say what? I say Satanist, you say what? I say America, you say what? We all have preconceived notions conditioned into us. What we do with them is a different question, but all of us do. And when rejection and agreement formation are like circulating, like we're dealing with people's preconceived notions and limiting beliefs. And agreement formation at step 4 is about empathetic, acknowledging, effective questions, right, that open up the dynamic and sitting in the space of. It's not like, okay, now I'm going to get them and convince them. And this is why I so emphatically will share with you, and we'll close with this today, that rooted in your fear of rejection, connected to, at least, perhaps not rooted, for many, not for everybody, right? But it certainly, if you use these words, pitch, hook, close, right? Get, take. anybody fundamentally who is pitching, hooking, closing, getting, taking, right? You vibrationally feel an adversarial dynamic with the person you're dealing with. Because you're not telling them, hey, here's my, like, or if you step into the frame with them of pitch, you're putting yourself across the table. Okay, go. What's your pitch? Like, there's a step that there's, okay, I'm putting you on the stage on a platform in a frame. Go ahead, convince me. Like, that's just not how it works. That's not the framework that we're talking about Unblinded. We're talking about integrous, heart-centered communication in love, which has Zeus energy, decisiveness. Like, I don't pitch. That's empathy. Like, thank you for the framework that you exist in your world. I honor it, but I don't live in that frame. I don't pitch anybody. I say those things all the time. If anybody's like, okay, what are you pitching? I'm like, I don't pitch anything. It's the first sentence that I say. Scotoma in, like, beginning. And I'm like, I'm not making it wrong to use that language. I don't know that it serves you, but, like, I don't pitch anything. I share things with people of massive value, and that's what we connect on. I don't pitch anything. And so if you have the energy of, if you want something from so a yes from somebody that you're getting or taking or imposing, it's going to show up with a very different energy. So the energy of connecting, getting to yes, is an energy of love. It's an energy of presence. It's an energy of deep listening, right? And understand that for some of the things that you want to do, it doesn't fit into somebody's life. But because they're resistant and scared, they're afraid of failing by saying yes, because the person you're talking to, as soon as they think a yes or no is at stake, their own stuff is coming up. They don't want to say no to reject you. They feel bad. They feel weird. Like, there's stuff that comes in. So we can't let that stuff come in, and that stuff comes in a whole lot more. You bring that in when you're using the language of pitching, hooking, closing, getting, taking. You know, my target, my prospect. Even prospect is like, but the person I'm sharing with, the person I'm going to go from a little yes with, it's a human. It's a human being. Not a target. I don't like prospect. Even word lead, like, these get into words of objectification of people, you know, and we get into that space of objectifying other humans versus, like, sharing, agreement formation, you know, all empathy, love, deep listening. I see you, I hear you, what you say matters to me. That's when it gets complex, right? Okay. So that said, any final, Adam Gugino?
Just that everything today really landed. And I forgot all about that. I was going to have some questions asked of me today. So I will be prepared tomorrow for your deep dive into fear.
Yeah. Your fears. Absolutely. And Fernando, ready. And for those coming, LBI, it is on and beyond. It will be it will be magical. It will be unleashing. It will be freeing, and mastery will rise. And it'll be a time of immense joy, connection, and will not be forgotten. Like, will not be forgotten. Incredible things are going to occur, and the outcomes are freeing us at a new level from rejection, rising in process, influence, and self-mastery hugely, and doing it with great variety, skill practicing, unique distinctions, have several new and fun announcements that you'll be the first to hear about things that we're dealing with Unblinded specifically. And yeah, you will definitely have an immense amount of collective energy, and depth of, like, tribe building will be present in the house, and a lot of fun. And we say tribe, we mean people who are collectively interested with free thinking to build their money, time, and magic with leverage, not living in the frame of fear that binds most people. Fear, like, that binds most people, of rejection, of failure. So everybody have a beautiful day. Super grateful, and, like, surfing is in the air.